I'd like to call the January 9th meeting of the New Canaan Board of Education to order. In front of you, you have the December 19th minutes, and when you've had a chance to look at them, if I could get a motion to approve. Let's see, who's here? Okay, get a motion to approve the December 19th minutes. Brendan? Second? Hazel? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We're still okay. Three.
Yep. That's a majority of the quorum.
Yep. So, okay. Moving on, you have in front of you the agenda. If I could get a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Brendan, second. Hazel, all those in favor? Okay. The next item on our agenda is the comments from the public. To ensure the public's right to be heard, the board has set aside time during the meeting for public comments. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to each subject. Do I have anyone who wishes to address the board this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to action items. The first item on our action items is the 2017-18 Superintendent's Proposed Budget. First read. Dr. Lutz.
Okay. Want to go around the podium? Okay. Thank you very much. First, let me say, with Clemson playing in the national championship again tonight, I want to thank you for the pace of the meeting so far. I think we're on good track here. It's been since 1981 since Clemson has won the national championship, which was, over 35 years ago. So knowing that it may be 35 years, and none of us will likely be here at these seats, I'm going to move through our budget documentation tonight as thoroughly and succinctly, I think, as possible as we go. But truly, this is a night that we look forward to. We've put a lot of work and thought and energy into developing the documents you have before you tonight, and it is my great pleasure to be with you tonight, sharing our work, sharing the budget, and sharing a lot of our thinking in the documents that you have. The excellence of the New Canaan Public Schools exists throughout the system. The Board of Education is one strong example of that excellence. The 9 volunteer members of the board bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the governance of our school district. As volunteer members of an elected board, each member actively and thoughtfully serves the school system and the community in meaningful ways with the very highest integrity. Your outstanding efforts contribute to the excellence of our school system and have a direct impact on the quality of the instructional experience for our students. As superintendent, I'm honored to work alongside such dedicated, professional, and insightful community members. And as we begin the review of the superintendent's proposed 17-18 budget tonight, I just want to take a moment to share my appreciation with you for all that you do. Education is an incredibly complex endeavor, and our success is made possible only by the many outstanding professionals associated with the New Canaan Public Schools. Our district is quite fortunate to have passionate and dedicated teachers, administrators, and staff, many of whom have had a hand in developing this budget that's before you tonight. I want to take a moment to especially thank a few individuals for their outstanding work on this year's budget. First of all, Dr. Joanne Keating, Director of Finance and Operations, has contributed countless hours and boundless energy throughout the budget process. Alongside Joanne every step of the way has been Tracy Haberman, whose work as budget director has brought great clarity and understanding to this year's budget development process and all year long to our budget management procedures. I want to express a very special and heartfelt thank you to both Joanne and Tracy for their truly outstanding work in putting this budget together and coordinating the many moving parts, as you'll see as we go through the details. It truly is an exceptional budget document that we're presenting to you tonight. I also want to thank Gary Cass, Jill Carenti, and Darlene Pianca for their numerous and insightful contributions throughout the process. Hours of meetings and countless conversations with various stakeholders have all helped, through Darlene, Jill, and Gary, are all reflected in the document and in the budget paperwork that you have. As far as district leadership teams go, I'm confident that in saying that New Canaan has the very best, and I'm fortunate to work alongside such talented professionals. Thank you. I also want to take a moment to thank our building and program leaders, most of whom are with us this evening. That includes Bill Egan at the high school, Greg Macedo at Saks, Chris Wolig, Joanne Rocco, Jan Murphy at our elementary schools, Alan Sneath, Jay Egan, Matt Salvestrini, Lizette D'Amico, whose daughter attends Clemson University, and she's appropriately dressed in orange this evening, Scott Barnett, Roy Walder, Bruce Gluck, and some other guy who has some kind of a tie to Alabama.
He's
Of
wearing
course.
red.
Red and black.
He's wearing red.
He is. No, I also want to thank John and Bob both in our facilities department who have done wonderful work for us. These individuals and the members of their various departments worked to thoughtfully craft their portions of the budget proposal while balancing program needs with careful stewardship of the resources. I'm extremely proud of the great work that we as a team have accomplished together during this year's budget, and it's my honor to publicly thank everyone here for all of the work that you've done. Now, the way I'm speaking, you might think that the budget process is through. In some ways it is, and in other ways it's just beginning anew. You see before you the budget meeting schedule for 2017. And as you look at it, you see different touch points of the budget for various town bodies and stakeholders here in the community. You see that tonight is the initial presentation of the superintendent's budget recommendation to you, members of the Board of Education. After tonight, we anticipate that there'll be questions and questions that come into us from each of you, which we'll be glad to answer either through our website and an email or at our next budget meeting here at the Board of Education on January 23rd. At the January 23rd meeting, the Board of Education would vote and accept the budget as a second read, giving whatever modifications the board deems appropriate. And at that point, it transitions from being the superintendent's budget proposal to becoming the Board of Education's budget proposal. From there forward, the Board of Education's budget moves through a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, which you see on February 7th, and then numerous opportunities for the public to comment and share feedback at public hearings for the Board of Finance and the Town Council. Ultimately, on April 5th, the Town Council is scheduled to vote on and approve the final Board of Education's budget for 2017-2018. But you see how the process works. They're purposely built into the process, numerous touch points for the various town bodies and for the public to be able to share their feedback. At the same time, I will be going to various buildings for PTC and PFA meetings. I'm sure I'll be accompanied by members of the district administrative team. And we'll be sharing highlights of the budget with parents and others that are gathered there. Again, we're also answering questions throughout the way. And what we've done, we began a few years ago and we'll continue this year, is when questions do come in, we'll respond to the person asking the question, but also post the question and response on our district website. I think that helps to keep the community and all interested parties informed about the questions and answers, and often helps to build the general understanding townwide of the budget and the elements therein. In the New Canaan Public Schools, our sustained focus and commitment on our district goals has provided a consistent roadmap for our success and is our guide throughout the budget development process. Our goals are consistent and stable, which means that they result in aligned and consistent action, and we've seen consistently strong outcomes as a result of these aligned efforts. As we learn from the news and our own personal experience every day, the future is complex, dynamic, and unpredictable, which places countless challenges upon thoughtful educators as we consider how to responsibly prepare our students for this future. instead of being buffeted about by all of these trends and the different stressors that exist in the external world. Our goals and our consistent focus on them allows us to take a thoughtful approach to all that we do, which then empowers us to keep our actions aligned to our students' best interest. We focus on teaching our students the knowledge and skills they need to be successful in any context. And we do so by developing, implementing, and assessing a relevant and rigorous curriculum with excellent educational professionals in a system that honors continuous learning and systemic growth. The budget proposal we're discussing tonight contains several primary themes related to both budget drivers and program improvements. The first budget driver, which we'll review again tonight, is district enrollment and demographic patterns. The Board of Education's class size guidelines provides a framework for our staffing levels and needs. At 80% of our budget, salaries and benefits for our over 700 faculty and staff is clearly the most significant budget drivers, and the one that we work tirelessly to understand as best as we can so we can then leverage all other available resources. Another primary theme of this budget is to be able to accurately and appropriately fund the budget drivers to ensure long-term sustainability for our system. The next is continuing our support for high-quality instruction and assessment practices. You know, the budget drivers tend to be large numbers that comprise a significant majority of our district budget. But some of our most exciting work comes from the program improvements around instructional and assessment practices. As research consistently shows, the single most influential factor in a student's success is the quality of the teacher and the educational experience in the classroom. Therefore, we focus our resources wherever we can on improving the quality of that exchange and the work that occurs in what's called the instructional core, which is the interaction between student, teacher, and content in the classrooms. Another theme has to do with our facilities. As you know, along with the operating budget we'll be talking about tonight shortly, we're also going to be talking about the capital budget and the importance for us to be and continue to be responsible stewards of all of the district's facilities. As responsible stewards, we also focus on safety and security for all of our students and staff. And in this budget proposal, we continue our security initiatives, and we look to further our use of the security systems we've recently installed throughout all 5 buildings. A final theme is focused on the incorporation of technology into the educational experience in order to continuously improve the instructional effectiveness and staff efficiency in our schools. This budget looks at the allocation of technology resources to be sure that they're aligned with the district vision and purposeful, authentic, grade-appropriate integration. Okay, I'll leave it at that. So having looked at those few themes as we go into the new budget, I do want to take just a moment to recognize some of the great work that's been done and that's ongoing in our schools, and to just speak briefly about the recognition the New Canaan Public Schools has garnered in recent years. We're dedicated to providing an exceptional educational experience for all of our students with a focus on rigorous standards of performance in a caring, nurturing, and supportive environment. As a result of all of these efforts, we've earned a state and national reputation as a premier school system. Our world-class faculty and staff work in concert with a supportive stakeholder group with parents and community to sustain the excellence of the New Canaan Public Schools. Their support propels us forward in our ongoing mission to sustain this excellence and to improve in response to changing times. The results of these collaborative efforts consistently place the district among the very best in the state and the nation. And it's our commitment to continue delivering the very highest level of service to each of the students in our care. I was going to break this up onto multiple slides, but the slides would go on for forever and ever. So you'll see in creating the slide deck, I broke many rules of presenting, especially with PowerPoint, which my sophomore daughter was quick to point out to me when I showed it to her last night. But I do want to share with you there's a reason for it, because the presentation is meant to stand alone on our website. So you'll notice I'm not reading the slides to you and speaking directly to them. But it is set up so that they can hopefully stand alone and be helpful for those looking to learn more about our budget. Here is a quick snapshot of some of the recent recognition and awards for our school district. Okay. Included among them is our recognized performance on state assessments just this past year. The rankings from a website called niche.com, which prides itself on being taking a holistic look at school districts and other organizations in communities in order to perform its rankings. And you'll see we do quite well on that. Can is another online site here, just specifically in Connecticut, that looks at school districts and grades them. And you see some of the others. I think the story here is about the continued success of our school district as measured externally by those looking at various metrics that are publicly available. In addition, we see an excellent return on our investment in athletics with a very high participation rate, well above 75% of our students. Just looking quickly at our statewide accomplishments in this past year, you see boys and girls lacrosse, boys swimming, boys tennis, field hockey, football, all state champions in their respective classes. Of course, there are many other pieces of athletics, right? It's not just the winning and losing that matters, but it's what students learn along the way. And that's where I think that high participation rate really speaks volumes to the quality of our program. Students want to be a part of this program because it is successful, because they are successful in it, and because they grow as individuals as a result. We're very proud of that. Similarly, high return on our visual and performing arts. As you can see, a variety of different awards for our students in music, in the visual arts, and in the performing arts. So very impressive. Our students' participation rate is equally high, and our students perform very well. A few years ago, we began this look at metrics specific to New Canaan High School as the graduating classes. And we identified this list as some of the more important metrics just to take a look at as feedback for how our graduating classes are doing. You'll see there's a consistent pattern here of high performance. We did change here at the high school. We're no longer asking students if they were accepted into their one top choice of college, because it just didn't feel like the right question to ask. So instead, we're asking them if they're accepted into the top 3 choices of colleges. So that's why that column shifts there. But you'll see, as you would expect, a high graduation rate and a high 4-year college acceptance rate. But as you continue to look down, you see the average combined SAT score continues to be strong. But you also see the number of advanced placement courses available to our students is increasing, and was as high as 26 last year. You see our AP participation, although it looks like it's a little bit lower at 350, that number comes into context when you realize the graduating class last year was significantly smaller than other classes in the school. So this is for the class of 2016, and there were fewer students in that class than other classes. Percentage of AP tests scoring 3 or above remains at 92, yet our participation continues to go up, which I think is a testament to the quality of the program and our students. AP Scholars is an impressive 180 students this past year. And the average ACT score remains strong as well. So you see these academic type indicators for our students coming out of New Canaan High School continue to be strong. And I think not just speak about the strength of that high school program, but about our entire K-12 program and how our students are doing as they move through. With this great success, our challenge is always to continue meeting our obligations, the community's high expectations of sustained excellence and continuous improvement, and our own standards of excellence for all of our students, while simultaneously meeting the community needs for low overall budget increases. This balance between our continuous improvement efforts and stewardship of the resources is a lot of what the conversations have been these past months. And quite a bit of thought and energy and careful consideration has gone into the budget document that you have before you. The few core concepts that undergird this initial budget presentation really focus on our district goals, our budget assumptions, and our related priorities. They guide us in our decision making. We use them as we think about resource-based decisions. Okay? And the focus that our budget has and should have on our mission, vision, values, and goals, and our understanding of students as learners. Okay. Now, as we get into the numbers, it's important just to, as a quick reminder, to think about what the numbers truly represent. Right? For us, as we build this budget, it's much more, again, than just a financial document. The numbers in this budget represent the financial resources required to maintain the level of excellence that we've been performing at and that the community has come to expect of the New Canaan Public Schools. It also reflects the careful consideration of various options and sometimes difficult decision-making and choices between possible solutions to problems, selecting one that's in the best interest of students and also, well, with careful stewardship and consideration. All of us here are passionately dedicated to preparing our students to succeed and excel. That's what brings us here tonight. That's what brings us to work every day. And I mentioned before how very proud I am of the work that we do and the document that you have in front of you. So as we look at it, you're going to see two different sort of categories of budget lines and budget items. Some of them are specific to our programs. We think about, you'll see some proposals for staffing focused on shifting enrollment and demographic changes here in New Canaan. In our program, you'll see some resources dedicated to the fidelity of our curriculum implementation and further support for high-quality instructional practices. Okay. And of course, the work around the integration of technology into the curricular experience for our students. Our budget drivers remain enrollment and staffing, our custodial needs with our addition coming online over at Saks. Of course, insurance in every school district, every budget, every municipal budget. Insurance is a significant driver, and it's no different for us here. Transportation. It's wonderful to have great schools and wonderful educational opportunities for kids. They have to get here. So transportation is a significant cost as well. Of course, heating and electricity and other things that are the budget drivers. We work to contain the costs and the budget drivers as much as we can so that we can put as many resources as possible into the programs in the classrooms each day. So at a very high level, this is the budget proposal for next year. The overall budget proposal in front of you represents a 3.81% increase year to year over the 2016-17 budget to the 17-18 budget. We will be spending a little bit of time going into each of these objects. This is an awful lot of information and to be on a single slide. So the next couple of slides break this down, hopefully into some more understandable chunks, and we'll talk about each of the objects. Okay. This is one of the ways that Board of Education budgets can be presented, and it is the way that Board of Ed budgets are organized into these 8 overarching, what are called objects. What you can see is it gives you 3 years of expended budget, 14, 15, 16. Those are the actual budget expenditures each of those years in each of those objects. In the 2017 budget, those are the numbers that I was here a year ago discussing, and those are the numbers that were approved in this year's budget, in the FY17 budget. However, as you can imagine, now that it's January and the budget was developed and approved back in April, there have been some changes to the resource allocation within that budget so that we can meet the changing needs of our 4,300 students and over 800 staff members if you include substitute teachers and others. So the next to the budgeted number is the 2017 projected number. And that number is much closer to the actuals. And that's actually the number, when we dive into the objects a little bit deeper, that's the number that the comparisons are drawn against. Because, for instances, when we develop our budget in salaries for 2017, we are months away from the start of the school year. There are some shifts in personnel that occur. But once we get started in 2017, as we mentioned, that the staff is relatively stable. So at that point, as we go into a few months, we're able to use the position control module in our financial package. And through that, we're able to encumber the salaries for each of the employees that are in our system. Now, we can't encumber every salary, because some are on timesheets and some work different ways. Our substitutes, we don't know how they'll be coming in. But the majority of it, we can. Therefore, by doing that encumbrance, we have a much more accurate picture of the salary number going into the year than we did back when we developed this budget, and it was approved back in March of 2016. Okay? So that's why we use the projected numbers against the proposed, because we believe it gives a much more accurate comparison year over year. Make sense? Okay. So another way to look at this is to, well, I like this graphic because it sort of shows you the breakout and gives a more visual representation of the distribution of the resources. But as I mentioned in the beginning, salaries and benefits comprise over 81% of our budget. As I mentioned, also, the resources should go towards our core work. And our core work is the work that happens in the classrooms and happens in support of our students. That's why education is a people business. The majority of the resources go to our staffing costs, to our salary and our benefits. Other areas include, as you see, property, purchased and contracted services, supplies, equipment, and other areas, which I'll briefly touch on each of them tonight, just to highlight changes, and then we'll go into the document itself. Okay. Now that's looking at the budget in terms of objects. In your budget binder, you'll see tabs for each of the schools or the cost centers as well. Okay. And that's another way, again, to look at and interpret the budget, and that tells us the costs of program in either the schools or in the various programs that we run. As you take a look at this, you see across the top, the blue, yellow, and red, those are our 3 elementary schools, and you see pretty close parity with those elementary schools and their budgets. You then go into Saks and the high school, and again, they're very close, close in enrollment, close in size, close in staffing numbers. Okay. Other significant areas you can see, the red on the bottom is our special education. And then over the $15.589 million is our benefits. And that includes our internal services fund account for our insurance, other insurances including workers' compensation, and other things. Again, we'll get into more details about this, but another way to represent the budget itself. So I mentioned over 81% of the salaries of the budget is salary and benefits. Over 60% is just salaries alone. Okay. The majority, as you can see here, goes to our teaching staff, which makes sense since they provide the direct service to our students in the classrooms each day. Okay. The teachers' portion of our salary line constitutes just about 70%. Beyond that, you see the administration and leadership is about 7%, teaching assistants about 6%, secretaries, administrative support are about 3.25%, facilities support is a little over 4%. So you can see how the distribution occurs. Our nurses are 1%. Our drivers are included in here, as are our campus monitors. I mentioned at the very beginning that education is a complex endeavor. It takes many, many people in a variety of different roles to make it all happen every day for our kids. Looking a little deeper at salaries, it's about a $2 million increase year to year in the salary account. That's driven by a few things. One is the contractual increases based upon agreements with the 6 employee unions that we have. It's the request for additional staffing, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And I'll get into details on each of these. And we have had the opportunity to contractually extend the work year for our elementary assistant principals, adding 7 days at each building in order to really help them accomplish the expanding work that's being placed on the roll. Grid progressions for teachers who are advancing on the salary schedule. And we did build in slight turnover savings of about $100,000 into the budget for some anticipated retirements, although it's very early and we have one anticipated retirement at this point. But we thought it was safe to put something in. But the key driver in our positions, in our FTEs, and our salaries is district enrollment. And I know we've spent a bit of time, a few meetings ago, going through district enrollment. Gary did a wonderful job in November presenting it out. Just thought I'd show a couple of quick graphics just as a reminder. This goes back to 2008. And as you can see, looking at the chart, pretty steady enrollment for all of our schools. Elementary is at the top because that has more grades than the middle and the high school. And then the middle and the high school you see there in the middle. And while there are some slight fluctuations in the buildings as the years go on, what you see is a pretty consistent, although gradual, trend line up. You see how SACs in the high school are trending there. And I think it gives a picture of the consistency of our enrollment through the year, certainly for the last 9 years, since 2008, 10 years. Putting those numbers together, again, you similarly see the way our enrollment has run since 2008 and how it's projected to run right up through 2021. We don't see any large spikes, but nor do we see any dips. What we see is a consistent pattern of stable enrollment throughout our district, okay? Which helps us in our planning as we look at it. Of course, going forward, they're just projections. They can always change, and we don't really know how many students we have until we open our doors on the first day and we start counting. But the projections have been pretty accurate through the years. NESDEC has been typically, for the entire district enrollment projection, they've been better than 99% accurate in the overall numbers. So the grade levels can fluctuate, but the overall numbers seem to be very, projected very well. So as we look at this and we consider our need for staffing going into next year, the one place in the district that looks like the enrollment is driving us to bring in additional staffing is at the high school. This year, the largest cohort of students in the district is the current 8th grade, and they'll be moving up to the high school next year. Currently, there are 381 students. So as that 8th grade cohort moves up into the high school, it would put a strain on the existing FTEs and class sections that we have there. So this request includes a 1.0 FTE for the high school to meet that need. Now, the high school being driven by disciplines, that's not hiring an individual. What that actually equates to is 0.2, so one class section in each of the 5 major areas, so in English, math, science, social studies, and world language. So the hope is, and the expectation is, that would meet the needs by offering an additional section for our incoming 9th graders, and that we would look at the enrollment in various classes as the scheduling begins in the next few months, just to be sure. But that 1.0 FTE is related to the enrollment as that cohort shifts. We're also seeing a shift demographically, district-wide, in our English language learner population, or English as a second language student population. Our numbers through the years have been consistently around 50, and I think there are currently 52 students with varying levels of needs. So those numbers haven't changed all that much, but what's changed in recent years has been the intensity of needs for those students who are eligible for and require ESL services. Our program to manage and to teach those ESL students has really been well run by Lizette D'Amico, who is our World Language Coordinator K-12 and ELL Coordinator K-12. And what she's done is set a network of tutors to meet with the students, to push in with them either in classes or during free periods and other times to provide them with some instructional support. That system has been successful through the years and has done an admirable job of helping our students to learn and to grow. However, as we've seen the needs intensify with the student population, what we're finding is that we have a need for more centralized management of the cases of these students in order to be sure they're getting the resources and the support that they need to be mainstreamed as soon as possible into the general ed classroom. As you can imagine, the position of K-12 World Language Coordinator is a significant one. And then also English Language Learner, K-12, trying to manage both of those programs is very difficult. And Lizette has done an admirable job of that. But the request tonight, a request in the budget, is for a certified teacher of ESL to join us here in the district to provide direct support to some students, to provide training and best practices for our staff and work with the tutors to be sure they're up to date on the best practices, to work with the town and the social services of the town to help connect these families, because a student with significant needs often comes from a family with significant needs, to connect the families with the social services that are available in town and help that family to transition and acclimate to the New Canaan community successfully as well. There's a little more detail on the next slide about this position, but it is something that I feel strongly is a need that we have here in the district. These students, by servicing them well, quickly, early as they come into our district, we're able to acclimate them quicker to our whole school program. They can better take advantage of what we have here in school, and also, by mainstreaming into the classes as we go. The third position you'll see here is over at Saks, and it's for a mathematics instructional specialist. Saks is, last I saw, Saks was the largest middle school in the state, with over 1,300 students, as you know, grades 5 through 8. We currently have one math specialist there at Saks, and that person is servicing students, again, grades 5 through 8, in a diverse program, right? The difference between a 5th grade mathematics course, and an 8th grade mathematics course itself is pretty significant. And then the different levels and variety of experiences that students have adds a level of complexity to that, such that it's overwhelming for one person to effectively deliver those services to the students that need it. By bringing a second math specialist in, we're looking to increase the efficiency of the position, to meet the students' needs, help our middle schoolers who may be struggling in mathematics to get back on their feet, catch up with their class and continue. So there would be a component of this that would be directly servicing students. Would also be working with teachers as we continue to learn how to best differentiate in the mathematics classroom instruction, and working with our curriculum team, K-8, as we continue to revise and update that program. So we've seen a variety of reasons why we believe this is an important position for us, and I certainly support it before you tonight. Next couple of slides just have a little more information about the English as a second language teacher and case manager. This person, I think it's important to note, would be trained and certified in ESL. So while the expectation wouldn't be that this person would teach all 50 some odd students that are in the program, it would be that there would be some students that this person would work with, but this person would case manage some of the more complex, difficult cases as well. And then this person would provide the training and support for staff who will work with the students every day in the classroom. Okay. And you can see those responsibilities and that information on this next slide. Okay. Similarly, the mathematics specialist over at Saks. The duties include, again, working with students, working with teachers, working with parents, and working with the K-8 math curriculum department in order to continue helping meet students' needs and improving and refining that program there at Saks. Okay. There are also a couple of non-certified staffing requests in this budget. One is a custodial position over at Saks. As you know, thanks to the great work of the Saks Building Committee, we anticipate that the new wing will come online sometime in the fall of 2017. The new wing will add over 24,000 square feet to the footprint over at Saks. So, and we mentioned from the start that while we don't anticipate any teaching needs based on an addition, because our staff is not driven by the facility, but it's driven by student enrollment, we did anticipate from the start that we would need an additional custodian over at Saks to maintain the facility and to take care of things. So that, knowing that that addition's coming online this fall, in this request, we also have 1.0 custodian. We've also seen a shift in the population a little bit over at our preschool. We've had a few students come into town with needs. And therefore, we also have 2 paraprofessionals that you'll see in our staffing report that we're adding over at the preschool. However, the 2 positions are grant funded, so they're not actually impacting the operating budget that you have in front of you. But the staff, you'll see again, are on the staffing plan, and it's actually footnoted there as well. We need to include it. Okay. So overall, the new staffing costs, as we look at it, the preschool is there again for the FTEs, but not included in the overall staffing cost. For our budgeting purposes, we put into the budget $61,665 for a teaching position, and then the $47,942 for a custodial position. So the new staffing costs are $232,000. Okay, so that's salaries. Again, if you have questions, I guess you're welcome to ask, although I'll keep moving forward, and maybe it's best to keep them to the end so we can, okay, stay here. So the next object, as we look at it, is benefits. And benefits are increasing by $777,581. Okay, it's a 5.25% increase year over year. Of course, the largest single budgetary driver in this item, in this object, and overall in our budget, the largest single number is the health insurance number. Okay. We're anticipating in this budget a 6% trend for our insurance going year over year, which is equal to a $725,429 deposit increase into the Internal Services Fund. We continue to work closely with Joe, our insurance consultant, and look at the trends and look at where we are. 6% is a little aggressive coming in as an initial budget, but we do believe we continue to see positive experience, improving experience, and we're confident that this is a good number to put forward with you tonight. Insurance cost containment measures continue to be a high priority for all of us. Some of the plan designs in recent years that have helped us to better manage these costs include an HDSA plan with a 90-10 co-insurance element. The HDSA is now the only option for teachers, and next year will be the option for administrators. And then competitive premium share contributions by the various bargaining units. In contracted services, you're going to see a decrease of $115,098. Okay. This decrease specifically is driven, it was primarily driven by a shift in personnel. We're currently contracting a speech-language pathologist through an agency. She's doing a wonderful job, but next year we're looking to bring that position in-house. So part of the increase in salaries year over year has to do with this reclassification. While it costs us a little bit more in salaries, it saves us money here in contracted services, because currently we're contracting that with the agency. So that's the primary driver of the decrease. There are some slightly increasing areas here, including an increased need for athletic training services in the fall season. What we found, given the number of students in our athletic program in the fall and the variety of contests and practices, we found that one athletic trainer, truly cannot cover everything that needs to be covered. We believe, and Jay Egan is ahead of this and leading in this, we believe that we should have an athletic trainer at every contest that we can. And when we have contests happening in football and soccer simultaneously, we have different events going on, but sometimes here, over at Saks, other places, home and away, wherever it might be. We have found the need for increased athletic training services. Also, as we've learned more and more about the importance of quickly addressing injuries on the field, and certainly we've become more aware of the danger of concussions and other things on the playing field. We believe this is a student safety-driven measure that's important. So what you'll see, it's a modest increase here in our athletic training services, which will enable us to contract in the fall for weeks of support from an agency. We would select the trainer who would work with us, and that would be a consistent person throughout the season, we believe. Jay has looked into it and done a great deal of research about this, and we feel confident that it's a good move for our school district going forward in order to maintain a high level of safety for all of our students in our program. We're also looking to increase the use of interns at the elementary school and the high school. Bringing a few more interns in and having them as substitute teachers helps us to again, contain the costs of our substitutes, but also puts us in a strong position as an organization that's sort of working to teach the next generation of teachers. These interns are here. Generally, they'll come and work for us during the day, and then they'll take classes at night as they earn their certification to become teachers. So it really enables us to help train that next generation of teachers, gives them an opportunity to work in a very supportive and positive environment as they learn to become professional teachers. And it helps our sub-costs. There's that too. There's a one-year pilot administration for the NWEA at the elementary levels. We've been giving the ERBs for years. We're looking to transition away from the ERBs to the NWEA at that grade level. This next year, we'll give both because we need to pilot it to make sure it'll meet our needs appropriately. So there's a slight increase in that. And then in the following years in the FY19 budget, we would see a subsequent decrease in that when we're no longer giving the ERBs. But for this one time, it's a little bit higher. And that's our contracted services. And we have property services. There's an increase of $151,000 or so in property services. We have some savings here that are important to note, thanks to Bob and Joanne and John and all of their good work in renegotiating contracts and looking very closely at our expenditures here. The savings include heating fuel, where we're saving about $45,000, and electricity, where we're saving close to $70,000. Those savings help to contain the costs in this account, although there are some other very important things that we did have to add into here that are currently not here, including maintenance project work for repairs below $10,000 district-wide. In your budget packet, and we'll point you to it a little bit later, you can see a list of those items and things that are there for the maintenance project work. But it's things we've talked about, ADA grab bars, things like that, other kinds of projects that need to occur. But they total up to $115,000 here. There's an increase in software licensing here in property services. And you see that includes an expansion of our mobile device management software as we continue to deploy devices that are mobile, right? Not tethered to a desktop anymore. We're looking at laptops and Chromebooks and iPads and other things. An MDM permits you or provides for you to be able to manage those devices remotely. You can load software onto them remotely. You can identify where they are remotely, and helps for that management of inventory and the dissemination of programs and apps and different things on them. We've been piloting a program this year with some of our systems, and we've had great success with it, so we're really looking to go enterprise-wide with that MDM for our technology department. Okay. We're also expanding our cloud-based backup capabilities for our servers. We're expanding the facilities alarm equipment systems so that they're integrated. I think you heard Bob talk about that the other night. And so just a slight increase to existing contracts that we have. And then finally here in property service, we have our wide area network fees, which we pay the town annually a fee for a wide area network. And then in years past, it was $5 per port per month. And our technology department does work closely with the town's technology department in the wide area network, and we do share one large network together. So we've been paying $5 per port per month for a total of $135,000 or so in years past. And we just received word that that charge is going up 50 cents a month per port. We have 2,266 ports. So that increase of 50 cents per month equals about $13,000 or so, $13,500. So there's an increase there. There's also, Connecticut has the Connecticut Education Network, the CEN, that had been provided by the state to schools. The state is pulling back its support for that, as it is pulling back in a variety of different ways. So we have a $10,000 charge for that Connecticut Educational Network next year as well. And that's our pipe to the internet from the school system. Okay? And all of that is included in property services. So we are fortunate to have had the savings, close to $100,000 savings in our electricity and our fuel. In purchase services, we have another increase of $160,000, which is a 2% increase here. This object includes our transportation budget, which is one of the largest, as you know, in our district. That is increasing contractually by 2.9% going into next year. But it also includes an additional $31,000 that was previously credited to us by DATCO for paying the bill in 2 installments instead of 12. And in conversation with the town finance department, they've asked us to break it out into 12 installments in the future. So we've had to include that 1% cost back into our budget. I'll be continuing my conversation with the first selectman and with the CFO of the town to try to go back to the way that it had been, where we're paying in 2 installments instead of the 12. By paying, if I'm not being clear, by paying in 2 installments, DATCO, our bus provider, transportation provider, gives us a 1% rebate on our whole cost, which equals the $31,000 or so. So the town has asked us not to do that for cash flow purposes. So I just want to, I'm going to continue my conversation with them. But as you know, when we put an initial budget forward, we want to be conservative in these areas because we don't know where it's going to go yet. Okay? And we continue to closely manage our out-of-district tuition line. It's the largest item in this purchase services area. And I know that Darlene has been looking at students and students who may be aging out of our program, and we're looking to contain those costs as best as we can. She always does. Okay. Supplies is another object in our budget. There's a decrease in supplies, a 5.4% decrease. You'll see in the supply budgets that there's been a little bit of movement in our elementary schools as they look to reflect parity between the schools based on program and enrollment. And again, you see those numbers when you look at the different cost centers. And I do want to compliment our 3 elementary principals. They work together to such a great degree that even when we have our budget meetings, they come together, share a spreadsheet that they've developed together, and we can see how the consistency of program and expectation across all 3 elementaries remains high and is really very well aligned. So, nice job. In the supplies, you also see reductions in some various areas just based on program needs. Some reduction in instructional supplies, technology equipment supplies, textbooks. These are numbers that are developed from zero every year based on the needs of those programs. And some years they'll be up a little based on maybe a textbook replacement cycle or something else happening. And other years they might be down a little bit because that need doesn't exist that following year. So we see the supply numbers do tend to, they fluctuate a little bit here and there, but it's important to know that they are based on the articulated needs of each of the programs by each of those program managers and cost centers each year. Okay. And then the last 2 are equipment and other. And now we've gone from talking about $57 million budgets to $17,000 increases. But again, just a way to understand the budget itself. In equipment, it's a 7.18% increase, which is $17,000 or so. Okay. And over in other, there's a 7.45% increase, but that's $13,000, and that's related specifically to next year we will have our tri-state visit. I think I called it triannual, I guess. I don't know if that's what they call it. But as you know, as a school district committed to continuous improvement in the work that we do, one of the groups that we're a part of and one of the opportunities that it gives us is the tri-state consortium. And through the consortium, every couple of years, a team of teachers and administrators and educators will visit our school, look at a program of our choice, and provide us with critical friend type feedback on that program and its effectiveness and suggestions and what have you. We do that with the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. We do that with the Tri-State Consortium. We do it in a variety of ways. And so in the fall, we anticipate that Tri-State will be coming to visit us. And so the majority of that increase is the cost associated with hosting the visiting team and doing that work. So overall, this year's operating budget recommends $89,529,530 in expenditures, which is a 3.81% increase year over year. Again, I know I've said it, but just to reiterate, the vast majority of our budget is salaries and benefits because this education is a people business. We continue throughout the district to look for and realize efficiencies. Again, heating, fuel, and electricity, I think, are two excellent examples of that. There are other budget movers that are included in here. We've talked about the majority of them. And that's how our budget is sort of all comes together. But as we sort of think about and talk about the budget itself, and we will go into more detail about the specific numbers. And I know this is the first time that the Board of Education has had the actual budget document in front of you, so I want to give you some time to absorb that as well. But as you do so, I ask you to always keep your focus on what really matters. Thinking about why are we a premier school district? What are our strategic priorities for the next few years? And how can we continue to be responsive to all of our stakeholder groups? So I am happy to continue and go right into operating. If there are any questions that have come up about the operating budget, we could take a moment to have that dialogue if you like.
Yeah, why don't we break here and ask questions about the operating budget first, because there's quite a bit of information, and then we can move on. Why don't we start? Does anyone have any questions for Dr. Lutze on the operating budget as it's been presented thus far? I have a couple.
Okay.
I think, sorry, hold on. I guess it goes into, and I think we've discussed this briefly before, but the wide area network charges, the $13,596 that's being charged by the town. Did they give you an explanation for the 50-cent increase per port? Or?
They did, and I am asking for further clarification, but the information that was shared was that they're increasing costs for the network backbone, essentially the Cisco, the routers and the support that are part of those, the routers that sort of the traffic passes through. So increased costs for, I think, both the hardware and the support on the backbone of the wide area network. They also shared that the fees hadn't changed in a long time. I guess the $5 per port per month charge has been consistent, and nor has the number of ports changed, through the years.
So they're seeing increased costs, so they're passing on the increased costs to
That's
us.
what was shared. Again, I am asking for further clarification just to better understand it, but that's my understanding at this point.
Okay. And then I guess the other question, and I think we need to, I'm disheartened by the request to change back to the 12 payments for the it's for the fuel?
Transportation.
Transportation
Yep.
costs, but that's right. So moving from the 2 payments to the 12, you know, I mean, I guess there's probably some, you know, cost of, you know, capital and interest rates are probably going to be rising, but that $31,000 goes a long way towards paying for the custodial ask. And so I think, you know, the town has a healthy reserve. So I think, you know, I would like to make sure we push back on that. I don't think it's an insignificant amount of money to be losing.
Yeah, and I'll continue the conversations with the first selectman. We agree. We think that unless the capitalization and the investment of the money can yield more than the 1% in the period of time they have, then I do think it's a wise investment. And it's, you know, it's a 1% on a 2.9% increase, you know, when the whole number. So it does go a long way in helping to reduce that cost a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Sherry?
So, first of all, it's amazing to me how every year this budget process and presentation gets better and better, and it's the fine tuning of it and the communication of it, and even just the focus on the ROI, for example. And I do think it's worthwhile to just remind everyone to pause and really think about what you're communicating with the ROI and what it takes to deliver the premier education that we do here at New Canaan Public Schools. So, I mean, I think that's really well done. I also think it's good news. I mean, this is the first time that I can remember since sitting on the board where, you know, the insurance is kind of a relatively smooth discussion. And I think you also, with the communication, you've done a good job of really laying out what we're doing around the insurance cost containment. And again, I think people really need to stop and absorb that, because I think that there's a lot of effort that's been put in there that needs to be recognized. And like you said, really the focus is around the salaries. So I just had a few kind of small questions on the salaries. So the first question is, so you laid out that 70% of our salaries are teachers, which is the core business of what we do. And I'm just curious if if that percentage has stayed consistent over time and how that compares to our DERG schools.
Sure. I'd be glad to check back and to see if it is consistent over time. I would anticipate that it is. I don't have a point of comparison either, but I'm glad I'll certainly pull together the answers to those questions.
Okay.
When we look at it, when I could certainly compare us to last year and putting this together and looking at things, it was consistent, you know, certainly in the 3 years that I've been superintendent here, that it's been about 70% or so. And certainly the vast majority, you know, much more, the vast majority is the teachers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I'll get the numbers for you.
And then just diving into that same percentage, one of the new staffing requests around the English for a second language case worker, do most of our comparable school districts of our size and complexity with the number of different international languages that we're supporting have that position? Can you just talk to that? And also, you mentioned that position would be providing some direct support. So would we see a decrease in like a tutoring cost coming out from somewhere else, or
that's hard to say, just because of the way that the tutors are set up, you know, in the way that if some of the tutors had more hours available to them, it's likely that those hours would be well spent with some other students that may still need that support. Different districts take different approaches to how best to meet the needs for their English language learners. I was in conversation with one of the high school principals in our immediate area, was sharing with me that you know, without a coherent program in their district, what they find is that there's a tension with the students in need of that support, students in need of other supports, and general education students and others that the principal's trying to manage even within the building. So I think having a well-articulated program is very important. There are some districts that have a teacher that might be at each of the buildings and who's working to support those students at the buildings. There are, again, part of it does depend on the numbers, right? 52 seems like a relatively large population for us here. It's significantly more in some areas that are right near us and close to us. But I think that the tutoring setup, the way that Lizette has sort of designed this, has been very sensitive to resources and very effective, in working with the expertise of the tutors and weaving them in and out of the program. But I think we're at a point where we need some more coordination around that. More common is having a teacher who might move between buildings, and then having only one person, you're limited to that person's availability at any given time versus having this cadre of tutors who can do it simultaneously. So in my experience, the way that we're doing it is, well, I can't say unique, is not the go-to for many other districts just because of the complexity of running it. But in the long run, I think it's more efficient and more effective for the kids.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I can get you specifics if Lizette would like to pull that together for us. Okay.
Just my
Sure.
last question, still just related to the salaries. So, and then on the new position with the SACS math specialist, can you just talk about, so we currently have one specialist, how those duties then would be split into two?
Sure. Well, both of them are listed as 5 through 8 because we want to talk, it depends on who we hire and their area of expertise, and Linda's the person who's there now, and sort of working that together. Most likely it would be an upper school and a lower school sort of setup with them, where one would work with 5, 6, one would work with 7 and 8. But we've got to see who the best candidate would be and who would come on board. But the strength of it really is this position does provide quite a bit of direct support for students when they're struggling with a concept where something's happening in the class and they could use a little bit of extra help. Having one person there for all of those students makes it very difficult to meet those needs. The other thing with the person or this position is around that differentiation of instruction for teachers in their classrooms, that professional learning and teaching. And because of just the complexity of the program going across, it's difficult for one person to learn all that he or she needs to learn in order to be well positioned to help train the staff and develop them in their implementation of the curriculum. So I think, again, probably by grade level and most likely an upper and a lower division, they would be able to really learn that program even more and then be able to provide more expert support in helping to differentiate. So I think that there's also certainly other pieces around communication with parents, and then contributing to the curriculum work that we're doing in mathematics K through 8. So
Okay, thank you.
hope that helps. Okay.
Anyone else have questions? Hazel?
I'm not sure they're questions. They're really more comments and compliments to people who have thought through some things that really are very, very important. I think the idea of having the trainer addition is an idea that's important. As we see the injuries, as you say, we are beginning to understand how really serious they can be. And it's very hard for the coach to be a doctor at the same time while they're trying to coach a whole lot of other kids. And they don't really have the background to be the trainer to make decisions that have to be made right there on the field. The other thing that I think that is an interesting thing is the incorporation you're increasing of the number of interns to come in and training them right here, that if these projections are true about how many teachers we're going to be going down in the United States, because there just aren't teachers that are training or whatever in line, that to be able to train teachers right here ourselves, know what they're learning and what their abilities and their skills are, and to help them. And they'll certainly have good training from the department, the personnel department, I know that. So the teachers in the schools will help them, and I think that would make them really good, strong candidates to step into positions as they open. So it's compliments to the budget.
Well, and I think that's an excellent point, and I want to commend our principals and their staff, because when we have interns who are superstars, we find a way to keep them in our district generally, right? If we have a position, then we get to know who they are, they see what they can do, and it is an excellent opportunity for us as well. And certainly we learn a lot more than any interview could tell us about what they bring to the table. So, and our principals are excellent at recognizing talent in that way.
Any other questions? I just had one question. I don't think it doesn't look like it's probably a major budget driver, but I just had a question about what the thought process behind moving from the ERB to the NWEA.
Sure. I'm going to turn to Dr. Carenti, since this is her area of expertise.
Well, as you know, we've been using the NWA or the MAPS at the middle school 5 through 8.
Thank you.
As we moved into the next generation assessments for K through 2, one of the state recommendations for early screening was the NWEA. They had offered several different assessments that we could institute for early screening as they moved into the new dyslexia category for identifying children, and they wanted to make sure that we were exhausting all of our response to intervention services and that we needed to have a strong screening system in place for those K through 2 students. So what the NWEA primary version does is it really breaks it down into the different foundational skills that need to be taught within reading. It breaks it down into that phonological awareness, breaks it into phonemic awareness, it breaks it into grammar, it breaks it into comprehension, and puts it all into those 5 different pillars that we're looking at, and it gives us some useful information. It goes beyond the developmental reading assessment, the DRA, which is what we use to help identify the reading level that children are at, but the NWA gives us more information. They had offered a few other assessments, and we did some extensive research on what those other assessments were, and this one seemed to make the most logical sense. So then that left 2 grade levels, 3rd and 4th grade, that we're not using the NWEA with. And it just didn't seem to make logical sense to do K through 2, stop, not do it for 3rd and 4th grade, and then pick up again for 5th and through 8th grade, so that we were kind of missing that continuum of what would happen with our learners from a K through 8 perspective. So the ERB was one of the assessments that we used in 3rd grade, and it's we just do 2 subtests for the ERB, but it's quite costly to administer that ERB. So the thought would be that we would administer that NWEA, look at the results of the NWEA, look at the results of the ERB to make sure that it's still giving us the information that we would want for those stay nines. The ERB is used for compelling information to help identify children for the advanced math placement program. It's also used to help compelling information for children that might move into the challenge program. So we felt that the NWEA would probably give us some of the similar results and offer much more instructional information to teachers, where the ERB really does not offer instructional information to us. So it's a screening device, it's an achievement test. Yes, we can compare it to how children performed on an OLSAT, an ability test, but it really doesn't help us for instructional purposes, where the NWEA really would help us. And so we're hoping that the NWEA would be able to serve 2 purposes, which would then allow us to eliminate the ERB and then give us one assessment that would really be consistent K through 8 and give us a good perspective of how our children grow over time.
And that's why I let Jill answer.
I know.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, Sherry. And then-
Okay. I know there's a football game, but I just have one more quick question. Can you just remind us for the retirement turnover savings, like $100,000 in savings is based on how many
Sure.
retirements, and how many retirements did we have last year?
Sure. Well, it's $100,000 is just a round number that we put in there as a placeholder. We did have some discussion about it. We have found that just looking at a trend over, say, the last 4 years or so, that generally when we have a retirement, savings in the district averages around $34,000 or so in the salary line. But you'll see, in the budget book itself, there's an introductory letter that I've written, and we sort of each of the areas, each of the cost centers has their own introduction to that. But that's a savings in the salary line. However, we see we've learned there are other associated costs with a turnover that, while they're not as explicit as you see that savings in the salary line, they nonetheless are borne by the school district. For instance, when we have experienced teachers who are retiring out after however many years of experience, and if they're replaced with an incoming teacher with, say, 0 to 5 years experience, it's very likely that that teacher's still in school, pursuing a master's or another advanced degree. And our contracting does include some costs for tuition reimbursement, for a percentage of tuition. Additionally, as the teacher receives additional degrees, he or she would have progression on the salary grid. So there's movement there as that teacher moves, say, from a bachelor's to a master's, or a master's to a master's plus 15 or other things on that salary grid. And so we have other costs associated there. Certainly there's costs around conference and travel and other things. So just like in the private sector, they talk about onboarding costs, right? We have a similar thing here in school district, where when we have people that come into our school new, whether there's tuition reimbursement or grid progression, conference and travel, there may be, for instance, conferences that the teacher would go to on teaching AP classes or understanding by design training, other things that are all a part of being a professional expert teacher here in the New Canaan Public Schools. Those costs are borne by the district as well. So we're seeing that. We've had some conversation about it as we come to understand it. It's not a straight line one-to-one because everybody that comes in is different. But while we have some savings in the salary account when we have those retirements, there are other costs in some of the other accounts. The other quick thing to mention, and Hazel said it well, we're seeing teacher shortages in a variety of different areas. We've for a long time had shortages in areas like speech language or in world language or upper levels of science, but now we're starting to see shortages in other areas as well. I think that fewer people are going into the teaching profession, while many have been retiring in recent years. So the competition for talent is increasing. And what's happening in part is sometimes we are still able to draw teachers away from districts, maybe where they've been for a little while, but those obviously are teachers that are higher up on the salary scale. So the savings, we'll keep an eye on it going forward. So I actually gave you a long answer to a short question, which is the opposite of what I'm here to do tonight.
Maria?
Quick question. Are the K2 and 3-4 NWEAs online, adaptive online tests or paper?
They are adaptive online assessments, so it is helping children to prepare for next generation assessments and allowing them to read online and have that practice as well. So there are certain assessments, obviously, that we continue to give to students, paper pencil as well. Not all of our assessments have moved over to the online assessments, but those are adaptive and those are online.
Anyone else? Okay. All right, I guess we can move to capital.
Okay. So moving into the capital budgets, the three kind of buckets for our capital budget, which are facilities, technology, and transportation. Actually, it's special education transportation because, as you know, we run an in-house transportation for our special education program with the white vans that Roy helps to manage as well. So I just thought I'd hit a couple of highlights for each of these areas with you. And again, Bob, I know, went to great detail and provided some excellent dialogue discussion, John and Bob both, at our last meeting. And in your budget binder is a bit of detail about each of the requests as well. But I just want to share that the way that our 5-year look ahead has been put together this year is that the column after the description gives detail on if this was a planned item, so this item exists in last year's 5-year look ahead as something we would do in 17-18. If it's something that's new, which means that it's a need that we've uncovered throughout the course of this year, and therefore have put it in new into the 5-year plan. And when you look at the plan itself, you'll also see a few that are accelerated, like this over here at West for the carpet in the main office here. When those are items that existed on the 5-year plan, maybe they were out a couple of years, but due to current look at things, analysis of where we are, we've decided to accelerate it. So that categorization that I know John and Bob have worked very closely with Tracy on, I think is very helpful and Joanne as well, I'm sure, has been very helpful in I think understanding the differences when we look at last year's 5-year plan and this year's. I think that people who haven't developed these plans are often under the misconception that you create a 5-year plan once every 5 years, right? It's not really how it works. Every year you're recreating the 5-year plan. You're looking to hopefully honor the things that have planned for the next year, but you have to be responsive to the needs that are in front of you each day. So at the district level, many of these have been planned. A new one at the bottom is engineering services at $100,000. And what that is the costs for the engineering services for many of the other projects and things that exist throughout this capital budget. Instead of embedding them in each specific area, what we find is, if we try to get that specific with these kinds of engineering services, then we quickly have to start requesting transfers or different things, because these services are such that they're very project specific, but it works better for us in our budget management to have one at a district level that we use for a variety of different projects. Okay. Again, the details in your packet. Just want to hit a couple of highlights. And you'll see across the schools at the top here, carpet front main office and abatement, which was previously deferred. You'll see at each of the schools we're looking to carpet the front offices. We'll find there are some dates in your budget documentation about some of the ages of the carpets. Some of them, I think, were put down before Clemson won its last national championship in 1981. So you want to take a look. We think they're overdue. What we'd like to do is really, that's an important area in every school, right? When people come to visit the school, where do they go? They go into the main office. They go meet with people there. It's a professional space. It's the hub of a school, certainly our elementaries, but all of our schools. So what we'd like to do is take out that carpet that has been there an awfully long time and replace it with vinyl tile. The tile has a much longer life, is much easier to keep clean and neat. And then if area rugs are desired for the different spaces, we can do that, have them for a period of time, and then just replace those area rugs when they're worn and they need to go. But we think the tiling will provide us with a professional space that looks clean and neat for folks.
You're being very generous. I'm seeing 22 years old for carpeting. That's disgusting.
Yeah, we think it's time. And you'll see that across all of the schools.
That's gross.
Okay.
I don't know what's in there.
Okay. Let's see. Bob has discussed many of these with you, in our last meetings. I'm just going to keep moving through. Okay. Bob mentioned also, I think, the playground equipment over at Saks, which is an important repair for our students and our safety. You also see in the district-wide, there's a playground restoration item for about $100,000, I believe. We discussed that as well, and that's about repairing the drainage around those playgrounds and then reinstalling the mulch in order to, again, repair a space that's used daily, if possible, by all of our students. So we want that to be the way it should be. The high school includes new carpeting in the library and right here in the Wagner room. Again, these are heavily used spaces where the carpets are more than 10 years old. We do the best we can to maintain them and keep them looking as good as they can, but there are certainly needs arise. They do get worn, and if you spend a day in our library here in the high school, you'll have a chance to see just about every student in the school at least once. It's a very heavily trafficked area each and every day. And as you know, the Wagner room is used constantly by students, by community members, by everyone. So these are important places and spaces, and we want them to look as they should. So our total facilities capital, we also have some special projects here. Below here on the high school. And the special projects are 3 for next year. And I left roof replacements in there because that comes on next year. We begin with our roof replacements. Those are large numbers, and you'll see in the 5-year capital plan some of those spelled out. But they're over $1 million as we look at the roofs and those that we have to replace. And how many do we have to replace? Is it 3? 3 in the next 3 elementaries. Okay, each of the 3 elementaries. And we also have a pending repair, I think, here at the high school. So we're looking at, the reason we pull those out as special projects, and we've done this in the past, is when we have certain projects that are expensive, big numbers, we pull them out of sort of the capital repair or maintenance because they do, the financing from the town, they may want to finance that differently. We've done that with our network infrastructure, as we've done that through the years. We've done it in a few other ways. The propane tanks is part of our ongoing conversation about transitioning from fuel oil for our heating in our buildings into propane. As you know, we have dual fuel burners, and we need to do some conversion, but this would actually enable us to install and own the tanks and then be competitive as far as the supplier. One of the other options we've looked at, and we continue to look at, is for the supplier to install and own the tanks. But we're looking at pros and cons of that model versus the district owning the tanks and being able to competitively shop the propane cost from time to time. So we have this in there as one of those options. There's a sewer repair, septic repair over at West in the special projects. And then energy conservation initiatives at $300,000. And we believe the return on that would be significant, right? Part of that. Okay. So if you didn't hear that, John mentioned that so far we've received $2 million to date from Eversource for energy conservation efforts we've had for the last few years. Since then, I think we've seen the transition to LED lighting, right, which again significantly reduces your energy consumption in running your buildings. And it's, with only our own homes for context, it's stunning when you look at the amount of energy that each of our buildings needs in order to operate each day. From the lights in the room, certainly the computers, and then the heat, the boilers, the air conditioning, other units. All of these require power and energy. So to manage those costs is very important. So this would be an investment to further manage those costs. Okay. So putting together the capital requests and the special project requests is about $3.2 million. I mentioned in the beginning, we also have transportation and technology services as part of our capital budgets. Our transportation keeps us in line with the schedule that was developed 2 years ago for replacement of the white vans as they've aged out. As you've seen in the schedule, we've got many vans that are well over 200,000 miles. They are maintained regularly and expertly by Roy and his staff and the help that they have. But there does come a time where we have to replace these vehicles. Used to be that we would lease the costs of these vehicles over years. 2 years ago, the town asked us to stop leasing them and to purchase them as capital items. By leasing them, we had the lease costs and our operational costs. So we made that shift a couple of years ago, and on the plan it was for the 17-18 budget to replace 3 additional vans. So that equals $144,000 there. And finally, our technology services lease, as I'm sure you recall, we use a 4-year lease in order to purchase technology equipment here in the district. That decision predates, I think, all of us as far as our roles with the schools. So for 17-18, we're requesting a lease of $150,000 payment, which gives us $600,000 worth of purchasing power because of it's that 4-year return. So we agreed with the town a couple of years ago, I guess it was 2 years ago, that with their funding of the 15-16 lease at a little over $200,000, which was a little over $800,000 of purchasing, that we would then be well positioned to bend this to about $150,000 per year, about the $600,000 spending, because with that purchase, we were able to upgrade numerous machines and to move even from typical regular hard drives to SSD drives and do other things to the equipment that would elongate its life. So in this year's budget, we're requesting $600,000 worth of new equipment, which will cost $150,000. We still have to pay 3 years back on the lease, which is why the actual technology capital budget would be $698,000, and you see that spelled out here. The purchases for the technology, just in general terms, and I think they're included in the budget document more specifically, but it includes a couple of computer labs, purchasing new equipment for the labs, one being the music tech lab here at the high school, which continues to be a growing program, but has some of the older equipment in the room right now. The art computer lab over at Saks is another one that is scheduled for replacement. Also included in that number are some projector replacements. As you know, we use the projectors all the time in our classrooms, and they are all of a certain age, and some of them are starting to go, so we're looking to replace those on a schedule. Additionally, I think probably the most exciting initiative in this request has to do with our computing over at Saks. And what we're looking to do is to supply a classroom set of Chromebooks or, of computers in each of our humanities classrooms, 5 through 8. What that'll do is help the teachers to authentically incorporate technology into their lesson design, into their instructional practice. What we do now over there is we have carts per team and per grade, and you have to sign up that cart when you're going to use it or check to see if it's available. When we have to go into testing and do other things, the carts come offline so that they can do the testing or do what they have to do. That's really, it's an antiquated model. Because what happens at that point, teachers are not able to access the resources in real time, in real ways, when best serves the learning and the instruction that's happening in the moment. The idea of technology integration being an event is, was part of our progression. Well, we've moved past that now, right? The use of technology in a classroom is not meant to be an event. It's meant to be another tool that students use to further their learning, enhance and deepen their experience. By having it in the humanities classroom, it also makes it available for our digital literacy curriculum, where students would be using it regularly in the social studies. And furthermore, it lets us repurpose the technology that's currently in those classrooms into some of the math, science, and other areas as well. So it's a school-wide initiative looking at infusing the humanities classrooms with class sets. And given the way that the technology works, because it's all in the cloud and it's using a Chromebook, a student could come in, log in, and have access to all of the documents and drives. So a student could start working one class, go to another, open up a different computer, log in, and have that same document, the same work, follow him or her from class to class. So the tool has evolved to be really appropriate for this type of use, and we've seen it used in a couple of different schools and used well. So we're excited for that initiative here at the school, and that's our technology piece. And again, quite a bit more detail, more detail I think is available in the budget book. But the district-wide capital requests then, just summing them up, we have our facilities capital at about $2 million. Our special projects, which is $1.18 million. The special education vehicle replacements at $144, and then the tech lease at $698. Because although we'll have $600,000 worth of purchasing power in tech, we're still paying back the previous leases as well. So it's a total of $4.1 million in our capital.
Okay.
How we doing?
So any questions on the capital side of the budget right now? I know we have some time to look over this for the next week. Yeah, I think, as Dr. Lutzy said earlier, when you go home and take a look at your books and, have any questions between now and the next board meeting, you can forward those questions to Dr. Lutzy and myself, and, he'll have responses for those in advance of the next meeting. So, are there any questions? If not, I just wanted to thank Dr. Keating and Ms. Haberman and the administrative staff and the building staff for, putting together such a thorough presentation. There's a lot to look through, and I know it's a lot of work every year in a tight time frame. So I guess that's it. Thank you.
Great. Well, again, I just want to share that certainly we all know that you're just receiving this document tonight. It might actually still be a little warm coming right off the press. So I thank you for your thoughtful questions even tonight. But, as you go through it, certainly, jot down questions, send them along, and we'll be glad to respond directly, and then to certainly share those questions and answers, with the whole board as well. We look forward to the conversation. A lot of work goes into this, a lot of thought goes into it, and certainly as superintendent, I'm immensely proud of what you have in front of you. The team, both the building teams, the district teams, everyone involved worked very, very hard in putting this together, and I truly believe it may very well be, to my thinking, the clearest budget presentation that I've ever seen. I really think that the level of detail is excellent, and it's a great teaching document for someone who wants to understand a school district budget and the many components that are comprised within. So we look forward to your comments and the discussion. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Oh,
So
yeah,
it might
sure.
be also worth mentioning the communication efforts, like I know you're meeting with the PTCs tomorrow and in the coming days, and how stakeholders can access the presentation.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, I mentioned before, tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact, I'll be with a joint meeting over at East of the PTCs. And then in a week and a half or so, I'll be doing the same with a joint meeting of the SACS, PTC, and the high school PFA. The budget itself, the document, will be on our website. We will be converting it over to PDF and tabbing it so people can click in and understand. And I do encourage and urge people who go to look at the document and the budget to take the time to read the narratives before each of the sections. I think they really do help people to understand what the numbers mean, what the priorities might be, sort of understand what's in each of those sections. So it will be on our website. We will be discussing it at our next Board of Education meeting. I'll be going to meet with parent groups and bringing whoever I can to come with me in the next couple of weeks. And also, after the Board of Education does discuss it and approve it on the 23rd, the Board of Finance and the Town Council both have public hearings as well, where the community is invited to come and share feedback about the budget. And I certainly encourage people to share their thoughts there too.
Okay. Thank you. With that, if I could get a motion to approve the 2017-18 superintendent's proposed budget as a first read. Brendan, second. Sherry. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Should I wait for you to come back here, or do you want to present over there the south? Okay. All right. So thank you, everyone. Should I give everybody a chance to get out of here?
Get home and watch the game?
Yeah. Lizette, you might want to race home so you could text Dr. Lutzi on the way.
Everyone but Bob Willoughby is welcome to leave. No. No.
Oh,
DVRing it.
It's early. 7-zip.
I think the score was in the 40s last time, so we've got a long way to go.
It's got a long way to go.
Okay. All right, so the next item on our agenda is the South School PTC donation. Why don't I get a little background? I think in your Friday notes, you got some information on the donation.
Yes. Yes, there was some information in the Friday update. This came to us, I think just Thursday or Friday. It's the South PTC. They are looking, really, primarily the expense here is playground equipment. They're looking to add some different equipment to the playground that they have. There are some other items included in this as well that are below the $5,000 threshold that we typically use for Board of Education approval, but since it all came through at once, we just thought we'd put the whole thing on here. Joanne Rocco is here to answer any questions for us if the board has any questions about it specifically. I believe it is for the playground in the front of the building, Joanne?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You come, why don't we have her? Should we have her?
Could you join us?
We have a smaller playground in the front of our school. It was our preschool playground many years ago, and it really hasn't been used. So we have some children with some special needs, whether it's for safety, some physical needs, some balance needs. We want to put some equipment in there that these children can use, but also include some typical peers and some equipment for them also.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there any questions before I ask for a motion? Maria?
I was wondering about the STEM assembly. Is that for the whole, what is it? What's the?
Yeah, it's for K through 4. It's from a company called Mobile Ed. And I believe both East School and West School have had this assembly. It's called, Bot, The Secret World of Robots. And it exposes children to how robots are used in different careers like the military, the police, NASA. It looks into the rover exploration program. So it's an assembly for each grade level, about a 45-minute to an hour assembly for each grade level. Talks about STEM, incorporates some of the math, the engineering as part of the assembly. And it was really well received by East and West.
Sounds neat.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, so if I could get a motion to approve a donation in the amount of $23,750 for playground equipment, risers, gym mats, parking banners, and assembly costs. Hazel?
Thank you. I make the motion with thank you.
And a second. Maria? All those in favor? Any opposed?
Thank you all.
Okay. And it should go, be noted that that's a very significant donation by parents to the school district that, offsets many of the costs that, or enriches the programming that we are allowed to offer the kids in this district. So thank you very much to the parents.
And it really shows the many ways that the contributions help. It's not just one thing. It shows
Yeah.
the risers, the mats, the banners. It's
It's a lot. It's a lot. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. If I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Brendan, second. Sherry, all those in favor? It's unanimous. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements and future business. Dr. Lutzy.
Sure. At our next meeting, we'll have our second reading of the budget, and we'll be having that dialogue together. And Sachs Building Committee FF&E approvals. If the Sachs Building Committee is ready for that, that'll come before the board as well. We do also, we're preparing for negotiations with our various bargaining units, so Attorney Mooney may be joining us for an executive session afterwards.
Okay, thank you. All right. In order to get Dr. Lutzy out of here quickly, if I could get a motion to adjourn. Sherry, second. Tom, all those in favor? It's unanimous.
Go Clemson.